Grace and peace, family. I'm Dr. Brandon McCrae, and welcome to another edition of Wisdom on Wednesday. Today, we'll be concluding our series entitled The Heart of a Worshipper. We've been examining David in his recovery of the Ark of the Covenant. Today, as we conclude this particular series, we'll be looking at verses 12 through 15. And in the English Standard Version of the scripture, it reads like this. So David went and brought the Ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who bore the Ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, he sacrificed an ox and a fattened animal. And David danced before the Lord with all his might. And David was wearing the linen ephod. Verse 15. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the Ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the horn. Today, I'd like to conclude our series with 3 observations of David's finished through worship. We looked at 3 observations of David's failure 2 weeks ago. Last week, we looked at 3 observations of God's frustration. Today, we'll conclude with David's finish. And when you look at the text, the first thing I see is that David studied. His study showed a level of preparation. Commentators say that this 3-month period between the time David retrieved the ark and the time that he left it at Obed-Edom house was a time of preparation, a time of studying. He called for the scrolls of the Torah, that is that law of Moses that prescribed to them specifically and particularly how God wanted to be worshiped. There are many of us that have not consulted with God about how it is he desires us to worship him, but we offer him whatever it is we have left after we've given our all to other facets of our life. But David was unlike us in that he studied and prepared. This level of preparation shows us, number one, that he laid aside his kingly robes, and according to verse 14, he put on the linen ephod. It shows that he moved from title to treasure. Allow me to argue this momentarily. He moved from the title of who it was that people recognized him to the treasure found in being a worshiper. And there are many of us that have not crossed the bridge from title to treasure. We treasure our title to the point that we no longer see the treasure that is in worship. But if you and I are going to finish strong through worship, we've got to move from title to treasure. Number 2, not only do we see that David studied in preparation, but we see that David submitted, and that led to a level of maturation. He followed the instructions given by Moses. It means a hill of beans in my country vernacular. If you know what to do and do not do what you know to do. He submitted, and his level of submission was seen in the maturation. He followed the prescribed order that God had given to Moses. If you would recall anything theologically about Imago Dei, or the image of God, you would understand that we are the set image of God. And a note, the glory was never meant to be on the shoulders of beasts, but always on the backs of believers. Let me say it again. The glory was never meant to be on the shoulders of beasts, but on the backs of believers. That was how God prescribed that his glory should be carried. And when David submitted to what it is he studied, he was able to walk in maturation. Lastly, number 3, not only do we see that David studied in preparation, David submitted in maturation, but lastly, we see that David sacrificed. That showed David's appreciation. The praise that he gave to God was unrestrained and unapologetic. There was a sound of victory that came from his voice, and it showed in his outward expression. He was uncontainable. As a matter of fact, you would understand that the scripture says he danced out of his clothes. He was not uncontrollable, but he was unrestrained. He was not out of himself, but he gave God all of himself. He emptied himself out to show his appreciation. So if we're going to finish strong in worship, we've got to study what it is God, the prescribed way that God would have us worship. In preparation, we must submit to God's will and mature in the things of God so that we actualize what it is we learned through study. And lastly, we must sacrifice, because David's dance came with a donation. And there are many of us that do not want to sacrifice our flesh to give in or give way to the divinity that God has placed inside of us. Allow me to leave you with a few notes. Knowledge is worthless if it is never actualized. Worship is not about what you know, but how you show your love for who you know. This has been your boy Brandon McCrae, aka BmacMusik. Do 3 things for me: like, share, and comment on this post. We want to make something God go viral. And until next time, I want to see your face in the same space for Wisdom on Wednesday. Listen, holla at your boy.